4-year-old orphan forced to carry heavy bags at a market. But a millionaire saw everything, and what she did shocked everyone. Please comment and rate my story from 0 to 10. Your opinion is very important, and subscribe to my channel to support my work. I'm counting on your help. The scorching sun of the big city beat down on the busy streets when the scene unfolded before the eyes of the 30-year-old millionaire, Evelyn Reed. Inside her air-conditioned Cadillac Escalade, she adjusted her Ray-Bans while waiting for the light to change, when her gaze was caught by a sight that made her heart clench violently in her chest. There, amidst the stalls of the farmer's market, a 4-year-old orphan was carrying bags of groceries that seemed to weigh more than his own frail body. His skinny arms trembled under the excessive weight, and silent tears left clean streaks on his face covered in dust and grime. The child stumbled with each step, clearly exhausted, but continued his task without complaint. Evelyn felt something break inside her. All her wealth, accumulated through investments and real estate deals, seemed insignificant in the face of such blatant injustice. Without hesitation, she parked the SUV and got out, her Manolo Blahnik heels clicking on the hot asphalt as she headed towards the scene. The market owner was a burly man with an unpleasant demeanor, shouting orders at several children working among the stalls. When Evelyn approached, he looked her up and down, clearly impressed with her elegance and bearing, but maintained a defensive expression. "Why is that child carrying weight like that?" she asked, pointing to the orphan boy who had stopped to rest, panting. The man gave a bitter laugh. "Lady, that's none of your business. The kid works here because he has a debt to pay." "What kind of debt can a 4-year-old have?" Evelyn insisted, feeling the indignation rise in her chest. "His parents left a hefty bill before kicking the bucket. Someone has to pay, right? And he'll work until he clears it all." The revelation hit Evelyn like a punch to the gut. That child was being forced to pay for something he didn't even understand, working in inhumane conditions to settle a debt that wasn't his. "How much is the debt?" she asked, already taking her wallet out of her designer handbag. The man hesitated, clearly surprised by the offer. After a few moments, he mentioned an amount that, for someone with her net worth, was practically insignificant, but that represented months or maybe years of slave labor for the child. "It's paid off," she said, handing over the money. "But the boy is coming with me." The merchant greedily grabbed the bills, but frowned. "Are you sure, lady? That one doesn't even speak a word. He's kind of weird, you know." Evelyn ignored the comment and approached the orphan boy, who was watching her with huge, haunted eyes. She crouched down to be at his height, trying to look less intimidating. "Hi, little guy," she said softly. "Would you like to come with me? You won't have to carry those heavy bags anymore." The boy stared at her for long seconds, as if trying to decipher whether he could trust her. His eyes carried a sadness too deep for his age, and Evelyn felt her heart break again. Slowly, he nodded, but didn't say a single word. During the drive to her mansion in the upscale neighborhood of Bel Air, Evelyn watched in the rearview mirror the boy sitting in the back seat. He looked out the window with a blank expression, his small hands resting on his lap, completely still. When they arrived at the luxurious property, with manicured lawns and an imposing facade, she expected some reaction of surprise or enchantment from the child. But the boy simply got out of the car and stood there, awaiting instructions. "This is your new home," she said gently, but he just stared at her without any expression. In the first few hours, Evelyn showed him the room she had quickly prepared, with a comfortable bed, toys, and new clothes. The boy examined everything carefully, touching the objects as if he feared they would disappear at any moment. The first night was devastating. Around 3 in the morning, desperate screams echoed through the halls of the mansion. Evelyn ran to the boy's room and found him sitting on the bed, trembling violently, with wide, terrified eyes. "It's okay," she repeated, trying to calm him, but he didn't seem to hear her, lost in some terrible nightmare. When she finally managed to calm him down, she realized that she had completely underestimated the situation. That child was not just an orphan or poor. He carried deep traumas that her wealth and goodwill could not simply erase. The following days followed the same torturous pattern. During the day, the boy remained silent and observant, eating little and avoiding any kind of interaction. But every night, the nightmares returned in full force, and she spent hours trying to comfort him. The situation became even more complex when she decided to call a private doctor to examine the child. The professional, after a lengthy consultation, confirmed her worst fears. The private physician adjusted his glasses and sighed deeply before delivering the diagnosis that would change everything. "Mrs. Reed, this child has developed a severe emotional block. The traumas he has suffered have created a psychological barrier that can take years to break down. He doesn't trust anyone, and that includes you." The words hit Evelyn like a sentence. All her determination to help the orphan boy was thwarted by a cruel reality that her money couldn't buy: time and patience to heal invisible wounds. "What can I do?" she asked, feeling helpless for the first time in a long time. "Specialized therapy, a lot of patience, and above all, consistency. Any sudden change can cause him to regress completely." In the following days, the difficulties multiplied overwhelmingly. The socialites who frequented her elegant dinners and charity events began to make venomous comments about her decision. "You've completely lost your mind," said one of them during a luncheon at the most exclusive club in town, the Beverly Hills Country Club. "Bringing a street urchin into your refined home? What kind of example are you setting?" Another woman, known for her sharp tongue, added, "Darling, you don't know the origin of that child. He may have vices, diseases, or worse. You're putting your safety at risk for a whim." The criticisms were constant and relentless. Evelyn began to question her own decision, especially during the nights when the boy woke up screaming and she felt completely lost about how to help him. The situation became even more complicated when she discovered that the boy had developed a peculiar behavior. Every afternoon, he disappeared into the garden of the mansion and spent hours building small structures with stones, leaves, and branches. They were tiny houses, arranged as if they were a small village. Curious, Evelyn decided to observe him from afar. The boy worked with an impressive concentration for his age, arranging each stone with meticulous care. Occasionally, she saw him whisper something to the constructions, as if he were talking to invisible people. When she finally approached to try to participate in the game, the reaction was devastating. The orphan boy panicked completely, furiously destroying all the little houses he had built with so much affection. He ran into the house and hid under the stairs, curled up like a wounded animal. "Please, come out of there," she pleaded, kneeling on the cold floor. "I won't hurt you. I just want to help." But the boy remained motionless for more than 4 hours, refusing water, food, or any attempt at approach. Evelyn felt completely defeated. It was then that she decided to seek more specialized professional help. The child therapist she hired was an experienced woman with decades of work with traumatized children. After a few sessions observing the boy's behavior, she made a revelation that shook Evelyn even more. "He has created an internal world as a defense mechanism," the professional explained. "These little houses he builds represent happy memories of a time before the trauma. When you approached, he interpreted it as an invasion of that safe space." "But how can I help him if I can't even approach him?" Evelyn asked, feeling frustrated. "The process will be long and painful for both of you. He needs to relearn to trust, and you need to learn to respect his boundaries, even when they seem irrational." The therapy sessions revealed even more disturbing details about the boy's past. Not only had he been exploited in the market, but he had witnessed other minors being mistreated in ways that the therapist preferred not to detail completely. In addition, He had witnessed the accident that took the lives of his parents, a tragedy that added to all the other traumas. While struggling to understand and help the child, Evelyn faced sabotage in her own home. She discovered that some employees were spreading malicious rumors about her true intentions with the boy, questioning her morality and sanity. "The boss has gone completely crazy," she heard one of the maids commenting to another. "Who guarantees she doesn't have ulterior motives with that child? Rich people sometimes have strange quirks." The discovery was devastating. People she had trusted for years were undermining her efforts and further harming the already fragile situation. She was forced to fire 3 employees she considered practically family. The external pressure also increased exponentially. The neighbors in the upscale neighborhood began to complain about the boy's presence, claiming that he didn't belong in that environment. Some even suggested that she place him in an institution more appropriate for children like him. The breaking point came when the tabloid press discovered the story. Reporters surrounded her property, questioning her motives and speculating about her personal life in an invasive and cruel way. "Millionaire adopts street child on millionaire whim," read one headline. Another said, "Rich single woman seeks attention with controversial gesture." The media harassment scared the orphan boy even more, who was already extremely fragile. He returned to complete mutism and began to refuse to leave the room, spending entire days hidden under the bed. The situation forced Evelyn to make a drastic decision: abandon her mansion in the city and move to a more secluded property, away from the curious and judgmental eyes of society. But the move, which she hoped would bring peace, ended up being the trigger for the worst crisis of all. The move to the secluded property, which was supposed to represent a new beginning, turned into the most terrible nightmare Evelyn could imagine. The orphan boy, already weakened by the constant changes in his life, interpreted the relocation as another rejection, further proof that he was not welcome anywhere. In the first few days at the new house, he locked himself completely in the room she had decorated with so much love. He didn't come out even for meals, didn't answer when she knocked on the door, and had returned to the absolute silence that characterized his first moments at the market. "Please, just drink some water," she pleaded from outside the door, leaving trays of food that she would retrieve untouched hours later. The boy had regressed completely, undoing months of small progress achieved with so much effort. The therapist, who now had to travel an hour to reach the rural property, warned about the dangers of that behavior. "He is punishing himself, believing that he did something wrong to deserve yet another change. In his mind, you are following the pattern of all the people who abandoned him." The words hit Evelyn like blades. Her attempt to protect the boy had become another source of trauma for him. While desperately trying to regain the child's trust, she discovered that her professional life was crumbling rapidly. Several important clients had cancelled contracts after the negative media coverage, claiming that they didn't want to associate their companies with questionable behaviors. Her partner, a man she had known for over a decade, scheduled a meeting to officially communicate his departure from the partnership. "You understand that I can't continue investing while this situation is not resolved, right?" he said, avoiding looking her in the eye. "The investors are nervous, and my reputation is also at stake." The betrayal hurt more than any public criticism. In a few months, her family business, built over years of hard work and smart decisions in the stock market, was on the verge of bankruptcy. She was forced to sell 2 properties and part of her investments to keep basic operations running. The financial pressure added to the emotional anguish of seeing the boy wither. He had lost weight drastically, and the dark circles around his small eyes made him look more like a ghost than a child. Occasionally, she heard him crying softly during the wee hours, a sound that broke her heart into 1,000 pieces. One morning, while trying once again to convince him to leave the room, she discovered that the door was unlocked. Inside, she found the boy building his little houses again, but this time using only breadcrumbs and scraps of fabric. The structures were even more fragile than the previous ones, as if they reflected his deteriorating emotional state. "They're beautiful," she whispered, keeping her distance so as not to scare him again. To her surprise, he didn't destroy the buildings this time. Instead, he pointed to one of the smaller houses and then to himself, as if he were trying to communicate something important. "Did you live in a house like that?" she asked gently. The boy nodded slightly, and for the first time in weeks, his eyes seemed to focus on the present instead of getting lost in painful memories. Encouraged by this small opening, Evelyn decided to sit on the floor at a respectful distance and simply observe. For more than an hour, both remained silent, she admiring his meticulous work and he gradually getting used to her presence. It was during one of these silent sessions that the final disaster struck. The orphan boy, who had shown faint signs of improvement, woke up one morning with a high fever and delirious. The accumulated stress, poor diet, and isolation had severely compromised his immune system. The desperate rush to the nearest hospital was one of the most terrifying experiences of Evelyn's life. The boy, burning with fever, mumbled disconnected words in the back seat of the car, alternating between moments of unconsciousness and episodes of panic. "Don't leave me! Don't leave me!" he repeated deliriously, clinging to her arm with surprising strength for someone so debilitated. "I'll never leave you," she promised, with tears streaming down her face. "Never, honey. You're all I have." At Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, the doctors confirmed her worst fears. The boy had developed severe pneumonia, complicated by malnutrition and emotional exhaustion. He would need to be hospitalized indefinitely, and there was a real risk of serious complications. During the next 3 weeks, the millionaire didn't leave his side. She settled into a chair next to the hospital bed, sleeping in snatches, eating only when absolutely necessary, and maintaining constant vigil over the child who had become more important than her own life. The hospital bills were consuming her last financial reserves, but she didn't hesitate to authorize all necessary treatments. She sold her most valuable jewelry, including a family heirloom necklace, to ensure he received the best possible care. It was during one of those endless nights that a nurse made a casual comment that would change everything. "What a brave little boy. He reminds me so much of his parents, whom I met a few years ago when I worked at County General." The revelation hit Evelyn like a lightning bolt. "You knew his parents?" "Yes, they were wonderful people. They worked in housekeeping here at the hospital before the accident. They even left a letter for him at the city hall in their hometown, in case something happened. Poor kid, he's been through so much." Evelyn felt the world spin around her. A letter from the boy's parents existed, stored somewhere, possibly containing answers to questions that had tormented her for months. For the first time since the beginning of this devastating journey, she glimpsed a spark of hope in the midst of the absolute darkness that had become her life. The trip to the hometown of the orphan boy's parents was made in desperate urgency. Evelyn left the child in the care of the medical team at the hospital and drove for 5 hours straight, driven by the hope that that letter might contain the keys to saving not only the boy, but the whole situation that had become an endless nightmare. City Hall was an old building in the center of the small Midwestern town. The clerk, a gentleman in his 60s with thick glasses, examined the documents she presented with meticulous care. "Ah, yes, I remember this couple well," he said, rummaging through dusty files. "Hard-working people, very concerned about their son's future. They made sure to leave detailed instructions in case something happened to them." When she finally received the sealed envelope, Evelyn felt her hands trembling. Here were the last words of the boy's parents, possibly the answers she'd been looking for. The letter was long and touching, written in simple but loving handwriting. The parents described in detail the personality of their son, how he loved to build small houses because he dreamed of being an architect when he grew up, how he got scared of sudden changes because he needed time to adapt, and mainly how the music of an old lullaby was able to calm him down in the most difficult moments. "When our little one is very scared," read a passage from the letter, "sing him the song I always sang, 'Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are.'" He always fell asleep listening to that melody, and maybe it will make him remember that there are people who love him, even when everything seems dark. The revelation was overwhelming. The parents had foreseen that their son might go through traumas and left an emotional guide for whoever took care of him. They described his deepest fears, his peculiar ways of showing affection, and strategies to gradually win his trust. Crying copiously, Evelyn rushed back to the hospital. She found the boy awake but apathetic, staring blankly at the white ceiling of the room. When she approached the bed, he didn't even move his eyes in her direction. "Hi, honey," she said softly, sitting in the chair next to the bed. "I met someone today who told me a very special story about you." The boy remained motionless, but she noticed a slight change in his breathing, as if he were paying attention. "Your parents left a letter for you," she continued, taking the paper out of the envelope. "They wrote about how special you are, how smart you are, and about a very beautiful song that you sang together." It was then that she began to hum the melody mentioned in the letter, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are." The reaction was instant and miraculous. The orphan boy turned his head slowly in her direction, and for the first time in months, a genuine smile formed on his small lips. Tears began to stream down his face, but they were tears of recognition, of relief, of connection. "Mommy sang like that," he whispered, his first words in weeks. "I remember Mommy." Evelyn felt her heart explode with emotion. She continued singing, and the boy began to accompany her with a weak but sweet voice. For the first time since they met, they were truly connected, not through pity or obligation, but through love and mutual understanding. The recovery from that moment was gradual, but steady. The parents' letter provided valuable insights into how to deal with the child's traumas. The millionaire learned that he needed consistent routines, safe spaces for his constructions, and, above all, patience to express his feelings in his own way. When they were finally discharged from the hospital, she had an honest conversation with the boy for the first time. "Would you like to go back to our house in the countryside?" she asked. "We can build a special garden just for your little houses, a place that is just yours." "You won't leave me?" he asked, his eyes still full of insecurity. "Never," she replied firmly. "You're my son now, and I'm your mom. Forever." The following months brought challenges, but also mutual growth. The boy began to talk more, to smile often, and to demonstrate the brilliant intelligence that his parents had mentioned in the letter. His constructions in the garden became increasingly elaborate, and he began to explain to her the projects he imagined. The millionaire, in turn, discovered that she had found a purpose much greater than any financial profit. Although she had lost much of her fortune, she realized that she had gained something infinitely more valuable: a true family. Her company, although smaller, began to recover slowly. Some clients who had abandoned her returned when they saw her genuine dedication to the child. More importantly, she discovered new business partners who admired her courage and determination. 1 year after that first meeting at the market, she legally formalized the adoption of the boy. At the simple ceremony at City Hall, he held her hand firmly and said, "Now I have a real mom, and I have the most special son in the world," she replied, kissing his forehead. The boy grew up to become exactly what his biological parents had predicted: a bright and creative young man who never forgot the lessons of perseverance he learned in the most difficult moments of his childhood. His constructions evolved from small stone houses to impressive architectural projects, fulfilling the dream that his parents had identified when he was only 4 years old. Evelyn learned that sometimes we lose everything to find what really matters. Her material wealth was restored over time, but the emotional wealth she gained by saving and being saved by that boy was a treasure that no amount of money could buy. Years later, when they were already a consolidated and happy family, she often watched him working on his projects in the garden and remembered that fateful day at the market. She had thought she was saving a child, but in reality, that child had saved her, teaching her the true meaning of unconditional love and purpose in life. The story ended as it should, with two people who met at the right time, saved each other, and built together a life based on love, respect, and mutual overcoming.